Alrighty then, corn children. We are going to put together in one giant hideous problem, finding a derivative using both the technique of getting a common denominator and rationalizing the numerator. Ooh, don't stop the video, keep going. It really isn't that bad. I mean, it's kind of bad, but you know. All right, we'll do this. We'll make it happen. All right, here's the problem. We're asked to find the derivative. Here's our function. You'll notice it has both a fraction and a radical. Woohoo! So, how do we do this? Well, at this point in time in our mathematical lives, we have the definition of the derivative. So that is what we are going to use, because that's what we have. All right, here we go. Now, space this out, because you have a fraction in a fraction. So, oh man, limit delta x approaches 0. Let's not forget that. F of x plus delta x, that is going to be 1 over the square root of 4 plus x comes out, x plus delta x goes in. All of that is in the numerator of this fraction. Ooh. Now I had some mercy upon your soul, because this is not like a 2x or a negative x where we need to distribute, so it's just x plus delta x. I'm leaving some room. We're going to do some common denominator work, so I'm going to space that out a little bit. Then the minus sign, and then f of x, the original function. All over delta x. Great. So now the common denominator work. We need a common denominator. The common denominator is both of these. There is no way around it. We are going to multiply each fraction by a form of 1. Oh, let's get all the parentheses in there. This one is missing the denominator of square root of 4 plus x, so I will put a form of 1 here. This fraction has the square root of 4 plus x, but is missing the square root of 4 plus x plus delta x. Giant form of 1. This is so much fun. I wish we could do this every day. You can watch this video again and again and again. All right. So now, fraction, 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 fraction. Oh, not a fraction. Let's write it as 1. Yay, everybody's a fraction. That's great. All right, so here's the mess we have now. Limit delta x approaches 0. We're dividing by a fraction. I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal right away, so I'm going to flip and multiply that. Watch your mouth. Right here. There it is. When you multiply, the order doesn't matter. So I've flipped and I've multiplied. There it is. I have a common denominator. I will keep the common denominator. All right. Our numerator is 1 times that radical, which is that radical, minus 1 times that radical, minus that radical. Awesome! Yay! So now we've gotten rid of the giant fractions within fractions. We do not have compound fractions. We just have regular fractions. But we need to factor, cancel, plug back in, and we cannot because of these radicals. So this is where we're going to be doing the rationalizing technique. We're going to be multiplying this by a giant, helpful form of 1. When we multiply by forms of 1, we do not change the size of the answer. Now the question is, what's helpful? All right, well, first of all, let's get everybody organized here. Here's where I'm going to put my form of 1. It will be the numerator, but instead of a minus sign, it will be a plus sign. But these don't change, that changes. So it will be the square root of 4 plus x plus sign the square root 4 plus x plus delta x. And it needs to be a form of 1, so the same thing in the top and the bottom. You can multiply by 1 all day long and it will not change the size or quantity of the expression, but it changes how it looks. Okay, now, good news, bad news. Good news, you don't have to do anything to the denominator other than write it all down. Bad news, we do have to multiply out the top, but it's easy. All right, so I'm just going to put all of the terms or factors of the denominator in the denominator. There's your delta x. Here's the next part. I can use parentheses. It's not necessary, but if it makes you feel better, and that is a multiply there. 4 plus x plus delta x. And then here it's a plus, so be careful. I mean, you can't get crazy on me. 4 plus x plus delta x. All right, so that's the denominator. I've left very little room for the numerator. Here's the numerator. It's a 1. I'm not writing that. We are going to FOIL these out. But really, if you think ahead, we're going to end up with the outers and inners canceling, and it's just going to be the front squared minus the back squared. So I'm going to cut to the chase here. It'll be 4 plus x under a radical squared. Well, the radical and the square will undo each other, and you're ending up with 4 plus x. Then we have a minus sign. Now here's where this gets a little bit confusing. When we multiply these together, we get the same thing twice, so it's the square root of 4 plus x plus delta x squared. The square and the square root undo each other, but this minus sign has to distribute to all of the terms. Right now the radical are grouping these together. Well, we're going to get rid of the radical by squaring, and so I need to distribute the negative. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. It'll be minus 4 minus x minus delta x. You got all that? If you don't, we could do it on the side. It's going to be minus the square root of 4 plus x plus delta x squared. The square and the square root undo, so it's minus 4 plus x plus delta x. Distribute the negative. There you are. Yes, you're welcome. All right, look at that numerator. Silly numerator for negative 4. X and negative x. Now, be careful in the numerator. Careful, careful. Do you see this minus? Do you see that delta x? There's an understood 1 here. This is a negative 1 delta x. We have factored it. What? That's a negative 1 times a delta x. Those are factored. That's a delta x times this times that. It's factored. It is now time to cancel. Cancel? Yes. I'm going to cancel that delta x and that delta x. Now plug back in. We're going to let this delta x head off to 0. Do you see it? Right here, go to 0. And right there, go to 0. So what's left? Negative 1. Negative 1 over the square root of 4 plus x. Another times, that's a times, square root 4 plus x times square root 4 plus x plus square root 4 plus x. Right here, you've got 2 of these. You're adding 1 plus 1 makes 2 of them. Here you're multiplying, so this will be 4 plus x under the radical squared. The radical and the square undo each other. What? Rewind it. Say it again slower. This ends up being 4 plus x to the first. It's a square and a square root. There are 2 of these. Yeah? Oh, and the minus sign. Whew, whew. So wait for it. I can clean this up a little bit more. When you multiply, the order doesn't matter. I'm going to put the 2 out in front. A square root is the same as a 1/2 power. We are multiplying these. When you multiply, you add the exponents. 1 plus 1/2, 1 1/2, also known as 3 halves. Oh, that was a killer amount of algebra within this calculus problem. That's why I did an example for you. You're welcome.